Hey everybody, welcome to this First Orion one-on-one. I'm your host, Steve Schuler. You'll notice the setting is a little bit cozier than usual. In Arkansas this week, we're having some snow and we don't do winter all that well here. So I'm at home recording this. Show must go on, so we're definitely wanting to get this information to you. So we're doing what we can. Quick note before we get into today's one-on-one. Next week, we have our first major report for 2024 coming out. It's the Branded Calling Trends Report, taking a look at the branded calling sphere and what's been happening back in 2023, how that projects to 2024. We'll be looking at which industries are growing the most. We'll be looking at which industries are making the most total calls and how that impacts your particular space, your particular industry. So you'll want to keep an eye open for that. Again, that's the Branded Calling Trends Report, and that's coming before the end of this month. Okay, so First Orion, really popular, really famous, if you will, for branded calling, where we basically take a phone display and whenever you send out a phone call, we put your business name on it. That's simple, easy to understand. But there are other aspects to this ecosystem that really can impact your business, and one of them is illegal spoofing. And here to join me to talk with that is Robert Wardlaw. He is First Orion Project Manager in charge of our Sentry product. And Robert, thank you for joining us for this one-on-one.
Yeah, happy to be here.
So, Robert, you're in charge of Sentry, which is our spoof-proof solution. So what I want you to do really quickly, just introduce Sentry to us and tell us a little bit about the problem that it solves, why this matters.
Yeah, sure. So as you mentioned, Sentry is First Orion's spoofed call blocking solution. So spoofing calls is a really simple, cheap, and effective way for bad actors to scam people over a phone call. The scammer will hijack a client's number and make scam calls using that number. So that what they're effectively doing is impersonating that enterprise. And so when our solution kicks in, so when a scammer spoofs an enterprise call, when they spoof that telephone number, Sentry detects that and then blocks the call before it ever reaches the end user device. So it is it's a simple solution to a simple problem. That's pretty grand by its nature.
Okay, so let's get a little bit into the weeds, a little bit under the hood with this. How does Sentry work? What's happening that allows us to protect businesses from spoofers?
Yeah, so using Sentry is super simple. All that a client or an enterprise must do is integrate with First Orion's pre-call API. So at the time of a telephone call, the client will send a pre-call API request to First Orion indicating that, hey, we're making a call from this A number. First Orion will then authenticate that call at the terminating carrier's network, authenticating both the A and the B number. So if First Orion observes a call that reaches the terminating carrier, using that enterprise's A number that isn't accompanied by the pre-call API request, we can determine without the shadow of a doubt that the call is being spoofed, and we go ahead and block it there. So it's really simple and it's really effective.
Yeah, this sounds like a very elegant solution to spoofing in that it's not, hampering the business. It's not affecting their outbound calls in any way. It's just a protection layer in between the business and the end caller. So this is our first year with Sentry. We launched beginning of April 2023. What kind of success have we seen so far?
Yeah, so what we've seen so far is a large amount of spoofed calls, which we knew that going into this whole thing, but it has been almost shocking at the volumes of spoof calls that we're seeing so far. So in our first year of production, we're seeing 5% of all outbound calls are actually being identified as spoofed calls and being blocked. So
Wow.
when you extrapolate that against the money that's being lost due to these scams, the numbers get really astronomical really quick. So we're really happy with the results, through our first 8 months in production.
That's wonderful to hear and kind of alarming that so much spoofing is actually happening out there kind of sets the stage for why this product is so needed. Of course, First Orion's big product, our flagship, is Inform, branded calling. How does Century work with Inform to help a business reach their callers and establish that trust with their customers?
Yeah, so it's pretty easy concept. So once a call is authenticated by Century, and that's a legitimate call, we've identified that that call is not spoofed. Once that call reaches the end user's device, we will be able to insert a display name that the enterprise has designated. On the latter side of that, it works just the same. If a call is identified as being spoofed, we go ahead and block that, and it never reaches the end user's device. So it adds that user display, or it adds that caller display, which is a really valuable thing to have, in the phone call.
No, that's wonderful, and a really good ecosystem for businesses looking to do business over the phone. Who's the ideal customer for Century? Obviously, anybody who doesn't want to be spoofed, but I'm sure that we've seen some personas, some customer types that would really benefit from this product.
Yeah, absolutely. So really, any enterprise who's handling sensitive data over a phone call is an ideal consumer of Century. So when you think about that, you think of government agencies, you think of credit bureaus, banks in general, any financial institutions. Those people are going to be handling sensitive data that a scammer is going to be more apt. They're going to want to hijack that telephone number. So when an end user sees a call coming from whoever a bank's phone number, who they assume is a bank, and a scammer is impersonating that bank, they're going to be more likely to divulge that sensitive information, which can obviously will result in financial loss. It will result in the reputation of the enterprise's brand being damaged. There's a full fallout. But to answer your question, it's really any business that is using sensitive data. That's who those scammers are going to try and impersonate.
Really solid information. Thank you. And thank you for joining us as Robert Wardlaw, project manager for First Orion, or product manager, I'm sorry, for First Orion in charge of Century. Appreciate you joining us for this one-on-one.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Steve.
And if you want more information on Century, we've got plenty for you. Head to firstorion.com/Century. You can see the full product page, request a demo, get in touch with one of our reps. We'll be happy to walk you through that. Thank you for joining us for this one-on-one. Hope you have a great day.